Joining us now is Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Congressman, lawmakers are approaching their annual August recess. Would you forego a break to get this agenda through?
Yes. We've called on that a few weeks ago. The Freedom Caucus did. We said, look, American people elected us to do certain things. Our job is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Do what you said you were going to do. And if we're not getting that done, we should be here in August to continue to work on it. So we've called for that, and we'll see what happens.
Congressman James Freeman here with
Hey,
the Journal. I wanted to ask you about the tax issue. You have said that the priority here should be economic growth. You don't want to follow this Beltway Convention that says that in order to cut taxes here, you need to raise taxes over there. I'm wondering, is this a view that the other members of the Freedom Caucus share? Is everyone focused on growth as opposed to flawed Beltway accounting?
Yeah, heck yes. Since when did Republicans and particularly conservatives say letting people keep more of their money is somehow a cost to the government? You know how this works. When we get in this revenue-neutral straitjacket, that's a Washington speak way of saying that, oh, tax burden is going to stay the same. We're just going to shift around who pays what. And I know under that scenario what always happens is the connected class gets a good deal, middle-class families get a bad deal. So we're not for that. Look, let's design a tax code that is simpler, flatter, fairer, one that lets families keep more of their money, one that brings down the corporate rate and is conducive to economic growth, and then let's cut some spending, for goodness sake. After all, that's what our party is supposed to be about.
What about the idea that y'all are going to take a hatchet to the interest deduction in this tax reform bill? $1.5 trillion business tax change. It would basically change even the way that companies raise money in this country.
Right. I mean, look, that one is still open. There's talk of that. There's this idea that we want to do immediate expensing. I think that's still open. What I do know is that a number of us have real problems and think it should not be part of the tax plan, and that is the border adjustment tax. This is a whole new tax placed on the American economy. I've talked to many of our big employers in the 4th District of Ohio. With global supply chains, this would be a huge new tax for them. Honda, for example, talks about this would drive up the cost of every single car at least $2,000. How does that help middle-class families? So I do think there is growing consensus that the border adjustment tax should be gone. Let's get rid of this and move on and have this debate maybe on what happens with interest deduction, what happens with immediate expensing. But I do think you got a lot of members who understand the border adjustment tax should not be part of the plan.
Congressman, it's Lonnie Chen of the Hoover Institution. You've been a champion in Congress for a long time for entitlement reform, and this is something that indeed is very important. If our fiscal trajectory is going to stay sustainable in the long run, we've got to get some reform of entitlements. One of the things in both the House bill and the Senate bill is trying to restructure Medicaid. And, you know, there's been a lot of demagoguing, it seems to me, from the left about what this would do and why this is actually really, really important. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what do you think the prospects are for getting this done? You know, this is something that I think is so critical.
I agree. We're looking to put some entitlement reform largely in the welfare area, including work requirements for the Medicaid expansion population. We're looking to put that as part of the reconciliation package, part of when we do this tax reform. Because, look, if you're going to get to 3% growth, you got to reform the tax code, you got to get rid of Obamacare, and you have to reduce the regulatory burden placed on entrepreneurs and job creators. But you also have to have a labor force. And right now, one of the things I hear every single day from employers, I heard it yesterday in our district, from employers across our district is, in spite of some of the crazy things that went on in Washington policy-wise the last 8 years, we're still creating jobs. We can't find people to work. So until you move people off of welfare and into the workforce, it's going to be tough to hit that 3% growth rate, annual growth rate that we need to deal with a $20 trillion debt. So all that has to happen. That's why we need to be here in August to keep working on these issues so we can get to the kind of growth rate that's going to help our economy and help families.
Congressman Jordan, I just want to dig a little deeper. You touched on it, but this proposal to possibly eliminate the interest deduction for companies, I've seen some estimates that could increase the cost of debt by as much as 30%. So how does the House see that as being good for the economy?
Yeah, again, this is one where there's still debate back and forth. We do have to be sensitive to what happens on the debt. I just talked about that. But I think the most important thing, go back to what we were talking with James, the most important thing is design a tax code that's conducive to producing economic growth. Design a tax code that lets families keep more of their money. Do that, and then let's focus on reducing spending. Right now we're having this budget debate here, and the Freedom Caucus is focused on $400 billion in savings over the next 10 years, over the budget window. We think that's critical. We've been pushing that number. We think that's the number that the Budget Committee originally came up with. Let's work on saving money. Still debate on what's best on the interest deduction, but overall, let's design a tax code that produces economic growth.
Congressman, I'm wondering how big, how ambitious this plan can be. Obviously, you Republicans in the House, you've wanted to do a big reform, simplify the code, personal business, really kind of a once-in-a-generation deal. But here we are. The year is starting to slip away from you. There's an urgent need to get the economy out of kind of the Obama slow growth era. Is it time to say let's cut some rates and have something to boost the economy and work on the huge simplification later?
No.
Or do you think you can get it all done now?
No, I mean, there's been a little talk of that, James, and I understand, but I still hope we can reform the code. I mean, everyone knows. Go back to the basics. Any tax code that says on the personal side, any tax code that says to half the population, you don't have to participate in the main tax is broken. Any tax code on the corporate side, which says to American companies, you're going to pay the highest rate in the world, is stupid. So if your tax code is broken and stupid, you might want to change it. So let's work on trying to reform the whole thing, but let's also focus on reducing the overall burden on families so they can have more of their money to spend on their goals and dreams, and let's really make sure it's conducive to growth. I'm not sure this border adjustment tax is pretty complicated. I'm not sure it is. I think it's a big problem. I don't want it to happen. So I think there's consensus there to stop that, but let's design the rest of it that's going to produce economic growth.
Well, and you guys also need to be messaging the tax cuts that are in this health care reform, not just in the House, but there's a $700 billion tax cut. The Democrats want to paint it like it's a tax cut for the wealthy, when in fact it cuts things like the medical devices tax, which in a 3-year period destroyed 29,000 jobs in this country.
No, I mean, look, there are good things in this bill. The CBO score had some good and bad in it. Getting rid of the mandates, getting rid of the taxes, saving $300-some billion over the 10-year budget window. Of course, the concern is the number of uninsured. But as the Speaker said, and you quoted him earlier, that's a lot of people choosing not to be a part of this crazy Obamacare system. What I do know is Obamacare is bad, and we need to get rid of it. Let's focus on that. Unfortunately, the bill that left the House didn't fully repeal Obamacare, and I wish it had. That's what we told the voters. But I thought it was the best bill we can get out of the House. Let's see what the Senate sends back to us if they send a bill at all.
And that's opposed to things we've heard from Senator Rand Paul saying that no bill is better than a bad bill, which I think we all beg to differ.